Blood streaked the front of the little boy's snow-white shirt like drops of fallen rain. It belied the innocence of a 3-year-old boy skipping home from church, anxious to see his father, who had just been released from one of his numerous sentences in the state prison. The boy enthusiastically bolted through the door. "Dad, we're home!" The smell of fried chicken was in the air, and finally the family was together. Dad had prepared a great meal, but the boy could not have known that the blunt end of a butcher knife was soon to be wailed against him by the hands of a drunken, enraged father. What was the little boy's crime that deserved such a punishment? The little lad had unknowingly rested his elbow on the table as he asked, "Please pass the potatoes." Filled with murderous rage, the father grabbed the weapon and rammed the handle into the boy's elbow, connecting like a baseball bat in a 90-per-hour fastball. Falling, the boy caught himself with the other elbow, but this time his face was the bat and his father's left fist was the 90-per-hour fastball.
"Get to the corner, you piece of, and stand there while I eat my meal in peace."
The rest of the family sat there in fear, wondering who would be next. But this day was reserved for the 3-year-old boy. Shaken, trembling, and quietly sobbing, the boy stood there like a prisoner of war. It seemed like an eternity, but finally the boy heard the murderous screams of his alcoholic father.
"Turn around!"
As the lad left his prison corner, he also left behind a crimson blood-stained wall. Seeing this, the father leaped to his feet like a giant cougar, bolting toward the boy for the final blow. But a terrified mother jumped in front of him and yelled, "Stop! You're going to kill the boy!" God finally gave my mother the courage to protect me, and that's when I first got a glimpse of His power and His presence.
I pray you'll be our eye and watch us where we go, and help us to be wise in times when we don't know. Let this be our prayer when we lose our way. Lead us to a place, guide us with your grace, to a place where we'll be saved.
Beauty is skin deep, but ugliness goes all the way to the bone. The flogging by my father finally stopped at the age of 6, when he was sentenced 25 to life at the big house in Joliet. You would think that it would bring a bit of serenity to my life, but no, it actually catapulted me into facing a new set of problems. Normal childhood development took a back seat to adult responsibilities, as I was now the man of the house. The guilt I experienced was extreme. If only I had been the perfect son, all of this would not have happened. It was all my fault, and I actually carried that baggage around for years. School studies were almost an impossibility, whereas daydreaming and numbing became an ally of mine. Somehow I persisted, went to college, was accepted into optometry school, and landed a job with one of the top eye surgeons in the Chicago area. For 25 years, I tried to save the world, but the constant stress caused physical fatigue from my sympathetic nervous system putting in way too much overtime, and I crashed. Fear, anxiety, panic, and extreme abdominal pain set in that lasted 24/7. You know something is wrong, but where do you go for help? For 1 year, I sought help from 9 physicians, which included 2 psychiatrists and 2 counselors. I had every GI, scan, MRI, CT, swallow test available, and the same results, normal. Eventually, numerous psychiatric medications were prescribed, but that had only exacerbated the situation and made it worse. With no medical diagnosis available and no relief in sight, I became physically fatigued and deeply depressed.
Wounded and torn, with a broken heart, my life had come to an end. You had the love I needed to put me together again, and you put me back together from the broken man I was. You took all the pieces of my shattered life and put me together.
Languishing in pain caused feelings of total helplessness, and my spirit began to die. It was then that God sent an angel to me in the form of a PhD in psychology. Through a wellspring of tears, I told my story. Suddenly, I sensed something was different about this encounter. After the interview, I was given a short verbal questionnaire. Finally, this gentle, seasoned man spoke. David, only 15% of adults with your disorder reach the promised land, and you have finally arrived. I sat there completely numb, almost paralyzed, as the shackles finally fell, like the prison door opening for the final time. The extreme brutality you experienced, starting at the age of 3, has caused lifelong scars of emotional and psychological trauma, setting up a post-traumatic stress disorder, and in all likelihood gave provocation to a genetically predisposed attention deficit hyperactive disorder. The results have been converted into somatic irregularities. The fatigue you are experiencing is from a sympathetic nervous system putting in way too much overtime. You have been at a crisis level 24/7 all of your life, and it has affected your endocrine system. Suddenly, the uncontrollable tears began to fall, just like they did when I was 3 years old. But these tears were ones of joy, happiness, thanks, and finally, relief.
when I am down and oh my soul so weary, when troubles come and my heart burden me, then I am still and wait here in the silence until you come and sit a while with me. You raise me up so I can stand on mountains. You raise me up to walk on stormy seas. I am strong when I am on your shoulder. You raise me up to more than I can be.
Only 15% of adults with ADHD are being correctly diagnosed and treated. The industry's prescribed regimen is usually antidepressants for things like panic, anxiety, fear, and anger. Seldom is ADHD ever considered. The unfortunate 85% are unaware of their disorder. Most of them self-medicate with alcohol, prescribed drugs, excessive caffeine, addiction to busyness, 70-hour work schedules, and exhausting exercise to satisfy the hyperactivity. But eventually life stresses will cause health to be disrupted, and unreversible irregularities like heart problems, GI eruptions, abdominal cramping, cancer, etc. will develop. If you exhibit behaviors like an overdriven desire to succeed and extreme overworking, multiple unfinished projects in motion and never being able to relax, procrastination and feeling unsettled, you may have hyperactive disorder. And if you are a risk taker, have an affinity for picking poor relationships, feel depressed and permanently damaged, you may be suffering from post-traumatic stress disorder. And if so, don't settle for black and blue, because there's light in the angels God has placed around you, like beauty from ashes, turning your mourning to dancing.
You raise me